spoilt woman kicked a beggar unaware he's her husband's father. She kicked him, right in front of the whole neighborhood. Not just any beggar, an old man with kind eyes and trembling hands. A man who asked for nothing but a morsel of food, maybe just some water. She thought he was just another dirty street person. She didn't know he was carrying her husband's eyes, her husband's gentle smile. She thought she was protecting her perfect compound from filth. But what she really kicked away was her own future. He limped away in silence, bruised, humiliated, but with a secret that would change everything. She went back to her gold jewelry and luxury cars, completely unaware. She thought she had gotten rid of another nuisance. The neighbors whispered. The community watched. Even the children shook their heads. But none of them knew the truth either. That old beggar wasn't just anyone's father. He was her husband's father. The man she's been living off, loving, depending on for everything. The bloodline that built her golden cage had just been kicked to the ground by her own foot. Now her husband is coming home. And when he finds out what she did to the father he's been searching for, someone's perfect world is about to crumble. Someone's marriage is about to explode. And someone's about to learn that karma doesn't just knock on your door. Sometimes it kicks it down. The morning sun catches the gold bangles on Adaora's wrists as she dismisses another housegirl with a wave of her perfectly manicured hand. You missed a spot on the marble floor, she snaps, not bothering to look up from her phone screen where she's scrolling through designer handbags. The compound around her gleams like a palace, imported tiles, fountain centerpiece, luxury cars lined up like trophies. But her eyes? Cold as winter glass. She adjusts her silk head wrap, checking her reflection in the car window, completely absorbed in her own image. The housegirl hurries away, shoulders hunched, knowing better than to argue with Madame's mood swings. What Adaora doesn't see is how her own staff exchange glances behind her back, looks that say everything about respect that money can't buy. Her phone buzzes with notifications from her social media, hundreds of likes on her latest post showing off her new diamond earrings. She smiles, that satisfied smirk of someone who measures worth in double taps and envious comments. These people wish they had my life, she mutters, adjusting the gold chain around her neck that cost more than most people's yearly salary. The irony cuts deep. Here's a woman drowning in luxury yet starving for something real. Her compound walls keep out more than just intruders, they've locked out compassion, empathy, basic human decency. She stands in her doorway like a queen surveying her kingdom, completely unaware that her throne sits on quicksand. Because when your foundation is built on looking down at others, what happens when life forces you to look up? The morning breeze carries sounds from the street beyond her gates, children laughing, vendors calling out their goods, the pulse of real community life. But Adaora hears only noise, distractions from her perfect world. She steps back inside, away from anything that might remind her that beyond these walls live actual human beings with struggles, dreams, pain. Her living room showcases wealth like a museum, Italian leather sofas, crystal chandeliers, artwork that costs more than cars. Yet the space feels cold, untouched, like a showroom nobody actually lives in. She moves through it like she owns the world, her heels clicking against marble floors that echo with emptiness. The house help know to stay invisible when Madame's in this mood, the mood where nothing pleases her and everyone's beneath her notice. But they also know something she doesn't. Pride always comes before the hardest fall. Her reflection stares back from every polished surface, and she loves what she sees, perfection wrapped in expensive fabric, success measured in carats and designer labels. I've earned all this, she tells herself, though the lie tastes bitter even to her own ears. Earned through what? Marriage to a good man whose values she slowly poisoned with her greed? Her phone buzzes again, more worship from strangers who think her life is perfect. She devours their envy like it's oxygen, each comment feeding the monster of her ego. The morning sun streams through windows so clean they're invisible, just like her conscience. Everything in this house gleams except the heart of the woman who rules it. And somewhere out there, beyond her perfect walls, the universe is preparing a lesson that no amount of gold can shield her from. She adjusts her silk blouse, checking the mirror one more time before stepping onto her balcony to survey her domain. The neighborhood below spreads out like a chessboard where she imagines herself the queen, untouchable, powerful, above everyone else's petty problems. Her garden blooms with flowers that cost more to maintain than most families' rent, tended by gardeners she treats like furniture. The fountain in her courtyard bubbles with water so clean it's almost mocking the thirst of those outside her gates. She breathes in the scented air from her imported roses and feels satisfaction wash over her like warm honey. This is her world, her creation, her proof that she's better than everyone else. But gardens require constant tending, and the seeds of consequence she's been planting are about to bloom into something she never expected. The clock chimes 10. And she knows the day is young enough for her to enjoy her superiority a little longer. Her breakfast waits on fine china, prepared by hands she never bothers to thank, served with silverware that catches light like her soul catches darkness. She eats slowly, savoring not just the food but the knowledge that while she dines in luxury, others scramble for scraps. The taste of privilege has always been her favorite flavor, sweet on the tongue but rotting the soul from within. Her phone displays her bank balance, numbers that would make others weep with joy, but they're just digits to her now, expected, deserved, never enough. She's built her identity around having more than everyone else, but what happens when life strips away everything you think makes you special? The morning is perfect, her world is perfect, she is perfect, but perfection is just another word for brittle, and brittle things shatter when pressure finds their cracks. Outside her gates, life moves at a different rhythm, the rhythm of survival, of hope, of human connection she's forgotten how to feel. But she won't stay isolated in her golden cage much longer, because sometimes the universe sends teachers in forms we never expect, wearing faces we'd rather not see, carrying lessons that hurt like healing always does. The morning sun climbs higher, casting shadows that grow shorter, just like the time she has left before her world turns upside down. She finishes her breakfast, completely unaware that her last meal of innocence is already digesting in her stomach. Because somewhere out there, an old man is gathering the courage to approach her gate, carrying hope in his tired heart and devastation in his trembling hands. And when their paths cross, her golden cage will become her prison, and her perfect world will crumble like a house of cards in a hurricane wind. The old man appears at her gate like a ghost from another world, bent shoulders carrying decades of defeat, clothes hanging on his frame like forgotten prayers. His fingers, gnarled with age and hardship, curl around the iron bars as he peers through to the paradise beyond. He's not just hungry, he's hollowed out, a shell of whatever man he used to be, reduced to this moment where dignity meets desperation at a stranger's gate. His shoes, if you can call those torn pieces of leather shoes, leave impressions in the dust as he shifts his weight, gathering courage for what comes next. The morning sun catches the gray in his beard, highlighting eyes that still hold kindness despite everything life has stolen from him. He clears his throat gently, a sound like dry leaves rustling, preparing words he's had to practice because begging doesn't come naturally to proud men who've fallen from grace. "Excuse me, madam," his voice carries across the courtyard, soft as a prayer but steady with quiet dignity. He doesn't shout or demand, he simply asks, the way a grandfather might request a glass of water from a grandchild. "Please, I haven't eaten since yesterday morning. Just a small portion of food, or even some water if you can spare it." His words hang in the air like morning mist, delicate and desperate, carrying the weight of a man who's swallowed his pride so many times it's worn smooth. The gardener pauses his work, glancing toward the main house, knowing what's coming. Even the birds seem to quiet their singing, as if nature itself holds its breath for what happens next. The old man's hands shake, not from cold but from the hunger that gnaws at him like a living thing, from the exhaustion of carrying hope when hope keeps failing him. He waits, patient as a stone, believing in the basic goodness of humanity, because what else does a desperate man have left to believe in? The front door slams open like a gunshot, and Aurora emerges wrapped in righteous indignation and expensive perfume. Her silk pajamas catch the light, a stark contrast to the rags clinging to the man at her gate, and her face twists with the kind of disgust usually reserved for stepping in something foul. She doesn't see a human being asking for help, she sees contamination threatening her perfect world, dirt trying to stain her clean life. "What are you doing at my gate?" she shrieks, her voice cutting through the morning air like a blade. The violence in her tone makes the old man flinch, but he doesn't retreat. He's been rejected before, humiliated before, turned away from doors that slammed shut on his hope. But something in her voice, sharper than hunger, colder than morning air, makes his heart contract in ways that have nothing to do with physical pain. The house staff peer through windows, watching this collision between privilege and poverty, knowing they're witnessing something that will stain everyone present. "Madam, please," the old man tries again, his voice gentler now, more careful, like he's approaching a wounded animal. "I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm just asking for your kindness, something small to help an old man get through another day." His words carry the wisdom of someone who's learned that humility is sometimes the only currency desperate people possess. But humility to Aurora sounds like weakness, and weakness disgusts her more than poverty ever could. She steps closer to the gate, her golden bangles jangling like warning bells, her eyes scanning him the way someone examines a bug before crushing it. The morning sun creates a halo around her head, but there's nothing angelic in her expression, only the cold calculation of someone deciding whether this interruption to her perfect day deserves her attention or her wrath. The old man waits, hope and fear warring in his chest, because he's learned that sometimes the difference between kindness and cruelty comes down to catching someone in the right mood at the right moment. But this isn't the right moment, and Aurora's mood has been soured by the mere existence of need at her doorstep. "You lazy, worthless beggar," she spits, each word designed to wound deeper than physical blows. "How dare you bring your filth to my home? Look at you, dirty, smelly, disgusting." Her voice rises with each accusation, feeding off its own venom, building toward something uglier than mere rejection. The old man's shoulders hunch as if her words have physical weight, pressing him down toward the earth he's been sleeping on. His gentle eyes blink rapidly, not understanding how asking for food could provoke such hatred, how basic human need could inspire such disgust. He opens his mouth to explain, to perhaps share a fragment of his story, but she cuts him off with a gesture so dismissive it's like being erased. The air between them crackles with the tension of two different worlds colliding, his world where people still matter, and hers where only possessions have value. What she doesn't see is how his face holds shadows of someone familiar, echoes of features that might remind her of someone she claims to love, if she bothered to really look instead of just react with blind privilege. The house staff exchange glances through the windows, recognizing this moment for what it is, a test of character that their employer is failing spectacularly. Even the gardener has stopped pretending to work, watching this collision between compassion and coldness play out in the morning sun. The old man straightens his spine with whatever dignity he has left, preparing for the rejection he can feel building in the air around them like a storm. He's been through this before, will probably go through it again, but something about this woman's particular brand of cruelty cuts deeper than usual. Maybe it's the way she looks at him like he's subhuman, or maybe it's the golden cross hanging around her neck that mocks every Christian principle she's supposed to represent. He takes a breath, gathering strength for one more try, because desperation makes optimists of us all. But the morning air carries a chill that has nothing to do with weather and everything to do with the coldness radiating from behind those perfect gates. The universe holds its breath, waiting to see how far human cruelty can stretch before it snaps back with the force of natural law. The old man's persistence snaps something inside Aurora's chest, not compassion, but pure rage at being inconvenienced by someone so far beneath her station. "I told you to leave," she screams, her perfect composure shattering like expensive china hitting concrete. Her face contorts with an ugliness that no amount of makeup can hide, the real her bleeding through the polished exterior like poison through silk. The gardener drops his shears, knowing he's about to witness something that will haunt him for years. Birds scattered from nearby trees, sensing the violence brewing in the air between gate and garden. The old man raises his hands in a gesture of peace, but she sees only defiance, only another poor person refusing to know their place in her carefully ordered world. Her silk slippers slap against marble as she storms toward the gate, each step building momentum like an avalanche gathering stones. The morning sun catches the gold around her neck, but there's nothing precious about what's coming next. "Please, madam, I'm not trying to disrespect you," the old man says, his voice steady despite the storm approaching. He's weathered worse than angry words, hunger, cold, the slow death of dreams. But something in her eyes makes him step back from the gate. It's not anger he sees there, it's something colder, more calculating, the look of someone who's never learned that other people's pain matters. His hands tremble as he tries one more time to reach whatever humanity might be buried under all that gold and rage. "I have grandchildren somewhere. I just want to see another day, to maybe find them again. Please, just something small." His words carry the weight of a lifetime's love and loss, but they land on ears that hear only noise, on a heart that's forgotten how to feel anything except its own desires. The space between them shrinks as she approaches, but the distance between their two worlds grows wider with each heartbeat. What's about to happen will echo through both their lives like a stone thrown into still water, creating ripples that will eventually become waves. The explosion comes without warning. Her foot connecting with his thin chest like a sledgehammer hitting glass. The old man stumbles backward, his frail body unable to absorb the force of her hatred made physical. He hits the ground hard, dust rising around him like the ghost of his dignity floating away on the morning breeze. The sound echoes off the compound walls, not just the impact, but his sharp intake of breath, the way hope sounds when it's dying in someone's throat. Adeora stands over him, her chest heaving with satisfaction and fury, her perfect pedicure now stained with the dirt of someone else's suffering. The house staff freeze in horror, watching their employer cross a line that no amount of money can uncross. Even the morning sun seems to dim, as if the universe itself is recoiling from the cruelty it's just witnessed. The old man lies there, not just hurt but broken in ways that go deeper than bruised ribs, staring up at a woman who's just revealed the true poverty of her soul. "Don't you ever come back here!" Adeora shrieks, her voice cracking like a whip across the sudden silence. "You disgusting piece of trash! Touch my gate again and I'll call the police. I'll have you arrested." Her words rain down on him like blows, each one designed to strip away whatever dignity he has left. The old man struggles to sit up, one hand pressed against his chest where her foot landed, the other braced against the ground that's been his bed too many nights to count. Blood appears at the corner of his mouth, a thin red line that condemns her more than any words could. He looks up at her, and for just a moment, something passes across his face, not anger, not even hurt, but a deep, soul-crushing disappointment in humanity itself. The house help duck away from windows, unable to watch their employer's soul die in real time. The gardener's hands shake as he pretends to return to his roses, knowing he's just witnessed evil wearing expensive clothes and calling itself respectable. The old man rises slowly, each movement a testament to dignity that no amount of violence can destroy. He wipes the blood from his mouth with the back of his hand, and in that simple gesture lies more grace than Adeora's entire life has contained. "I'm sorry for disturbing your peace, madam," he says, his voice quiet but carrying a weight that makes her step back despite herself. There's no anger in his tone, no threats of revenge or curses upon her household, just a sadness so deep it seems to echo from the bottom of the world. He doesn't know that the woman who just kicked him shares blood with someone he loves more than his own life, doesn't know that his pain is about to become the foundation for someone else's justice. All he knows is that he asked for bread and received stones, asked for water and received poison, asked for humanity and met a monster wearing his daughter-in-law's face. The irony would be beautiful if it weren't so tragic. The man she's just brutalized could have given her everything she thought she wanted: respect, love, a place in a family that actually values what matters. He limps away from her gate, each step a small act of rebellion against the cruelty that tried to break him. His shadow stretches long across the dusty street, like a prayer written in darkness across the morning light. Adeora watches him go with satisfaction burning in her chest, believing she's just protected her perfect world from contamination. She smooths her silk pajamas, adjusts her gold jewelry, checks her reflection in the car window, everything back in place, everything perfect again. But the gardener sees what she doesn't: how the old man's shoulders carry themselves with dignity even in defeat, how his face holds features that would look familiar if anyone bothered to really look. The morning air carries the weight of consequence now, thick as honey and twice as slow. What Adeora doesn't realize is that she's just kicked away her own future, destroyed her own foundation, and signed her own eviction notice from the paradise she thinks she's protecting. The universe keeps perfect books, and her account just went into the deepest kind of debt, the kind that can only be paid with everything she thinks makes her special. Mrs. Ngozi drops her basket of tomatoes, the red fruit scattering across the market dirt like drops of blood as word spreads about what happened at the big madam's compound. She kicked him? An old man, her voice rises above the morning bustle, causing other women to abandon their haggling and crowd around her stall. The story spreads like wildfire through the marketplace, each telling adding details, building the horror of what neighbors witnessed from their windows and doorways. Hands gesture wildly as voices compete to express their outrage, their disbelief that someone could sink so low. The pepper seller shakes her head so hard her head wrap threatens to come loose, while the woman selling fabric clutches her chest like she's trying to hold her heart inside her body. These women who've known hunger themselves, who've extended hands to help strangers, cannot comprehend the coldness it takes to kick a man when he's already down. The morning market has become a tribunal, and Adeora is being tried by the court of public opinion and found guilty of being inhuman. Children who saw the incident from their school route gather in small clusters, their young voices trying to process what they witnessed. "My mama says you should always help old people," 7-year-old Kemi tells her friends, her face scrunched with confusion. Why did the gold lady hurt the grandfather? Their innocence makes the crime even more stark. If children can recognize cruelty immediately, what does that say about an adult who can't find basic kindness? Their parents will use this story as a teaching moment. This is what happens when money becomes more important than mercy, when status matters more than soul. The children will remember this morning for the rest of their lives, the day they learned that being rich doesn't make you good, that having everything can leave you with nothing that actually matters. Their pure hearts reject what they've seen, and in their rejection lies the beginning of justice. Because when children turn away from you in disappointment, you know you've crossed a line that can never be uncrossed. The local mechanic wipes grease from his hands with unusual force, his jaw clenched as he tells his apprentice about the morning's events. "That woman has forgotten where she came from," he growls, throwing his rag down like he wishes it was something harder. Money has poisoned her completely. His workshop becomes an informal gathering place as men drift in throughout the morning, each adding their voice to the growing chorus of condemnation. They've all seen Adeora's husband, a good man, respectful, someone who greets them properly and pays his debts. But his wife? She drives past them like they're furniture, air beneath her notice, obstacles to navigate around rather than fellow human beings to acknowledge. The irony cuts deep. She lives in luxury built by community wealth, yet treats the community like enemies. The mechanics know engines, understand how parts work together, and they can see that Adeora is a broken part threatening to damage the whole machine of their neighborhood's peace. The house help from neighboring compounds share knowing looks as they collect at the communal water pump, their voices dropping to conspiratorial whispers. "We always knew she was cold," confides Mary, who works 2 houses down. But to kick an old man? That's devil behavior. They've seen how Adeora treats her own staff, like shadows, like servants who exist only when needed and disappear when not. These women who clean toilets and wash floors possess more dignity in their work-worn fingers than Adeora has in her entire jewel body. They understand something their employers often forget: character isn't bought at the designer store, respect isn't inherited with money, and kindness can't be purchased with gold credit cards. Their quiet judgment carries weight because they're the ones who see behind closed doors, who know the difference between people who have wealth and people who are wealthy in spirit. And Adeora just revealed herself as the poorest person in a neighborhood full of actual poverty. The local pastor adjusts his glasses as congregation members fill his office throughout the morning, each bringing the same story, the same shock, the same request for guidance on how to process such heartless behavior. "Father, what kind of person kicks a hungry old man?" they ask, genuinely bewildered. He's counseled people through many sins: adultery, theft, pride, but this level of cruelty toward the defenseless leaves him struggling for words. His Sunday sermon is already writing itself, the parable of the rich fool who stored up treasures but had no treasure in their heart. He thinks about the golden cross Adeora wears to church, how she sits in the front pew like faith is another accessory to display, how she drops large bills in the collection plate like she's buying her way into heaven. The congregation will understand without him having to say her name directly. They'll know who he's talking about when he speaks of wolves in sheep's clothing, of people who honor God with their lips while their hearts are far from him. Because sometimes the most religious-looking people are the ones who've forgotten what religion actually means. By afternoon, the story has traveled through hair salons, taxi stands, and evening church services like a virus of moral outrage. Social media picks up the tale. Someone's cousin's friend recorded part of it on their phone from across the street. The video is grainy, distant, but clear enough to show a well-dressed woman kicking a helpless old man. Comments flood in from strangers who don't even know Adeora's name but recognize her type, the kind of person who mistakes cruelty for strength, who confuses having money with having worth. Her carefully curated social media image, the designer outfits, the luxury vacations, the blessed life captions, now looks different in light of this single act of heartless violence. People scroll back through her posts with new eyes, seeing not success but emptiness, not blessing but blindness. The internet never forgets, and tonight it's remembering that behind every perfect Instagram photo might be hiding someone capable of kicking grandmothers for sport. The neighborhood's evening feels different now, heavier, like the air itself has been contaminated by what it witnessed. Children are called inside earlier than usual, parents wanting to shield them from the lingering energy of cruelty that seems to hang around Adeora's compound like smoke. Dogs bark more aggressively at her gate, as if they can smell the spiritual rot emanating from within those perfect walls. Even the street vendors who usually compete for every customer begin refusing to serve her house, claiming they're sold out when her cook appears, finding excuses to pack up early when they see her car approaching. The community is responding like an immune system detecting infection, slowly but surely isolating the source of toxicity from the healthy parts of their shared life. And Adeora, wrapped in her golden ignorance, remains completely unaware that she's being quarantined by the very people whose acceptance she never thought she needed. But everyone needs community, and community is exactly what's about to be taken away from her when she needs it most. Chike's hands shake as he stares at the faded photograph, the edges worn soft from years of handling like a prayer book read too many times. The man in the picture smiles with eyes that mirror his own, gentle, kind, filled with a warmth that disappeared the night he vanished into darkness and shame. "Papa," he whispers to the empty hotel room, his voice breaking on the single word that carries a lifetime of love and loss. The business conference he just attended blurs into background noise compared to the constant ache in his chest, a hollow space where his father's presence used to live. His successful career, his beautiful home, his comfortable marriage. None of it fills the void left by the man who taught him that wealth means nothing if you have no one to share it with. The photograph trembles in his grip as memories flood back, bedtime stories about integrity, morning lessons about treating everyone with respect, afternoon conversations about what it means to be a good man in a hard world. All those values his father planted are still growing inside him, but the gardener who planted them disappeared before the harvest. The hotel room's luxury mocks his pain: Egyptian cotton sheets, marble bathroom, champagne chilling in an ice bucket he hasn't touched. All the success his father dreamed for him, laid out like a feast for someone who's lost his appetite for achievement. Chike's phone buzzes with congratulations from colleagues about the deal he just closed, millions of naira secured with his signature, but the numbers feel hollow without someone to make proud. He scrolls through his contacts to his private investigator, the latest in a long line of professionals he's hired to search for a ghost. Any leads on Papa's case, he types, though he knows the answer will be the same disappointment he's swallowed for 10 years. The investigator responds within minutes, still searching. No new information. For words that cost him hope and money in equal measure, but he keeps paying because stopping would feel like giving up on love itself. Somewhere out there, his father might be wondering if his son even cares that he's gone, never knowing that caring has become Chike's full-time occupation. His best friend's voice crackles through the phone speaker, cutting through the hotel room's expensive silence like a lifeline. "Chike, you can't keep torturing yourself like this," Emeka says, his tone gentle but firm. "It's been 10 years, brother. Maybe it's time to accept that some people don't want to be found." But acceptance tastes like betrayal to a son who still hears his father's voice in quiet moments, still feels those work-worn hands guiding him through life's difficult decisions. "He didn't leave because he wanted to," Chike replies, pacing the hotel room's Persian carpet like a caged animal. "He left because he was ashamed. Because his business failed and he thought he'd failed me." The memory burns fresh as yesterday, waking up to find his father's note on the kitchen table, those devastating words about being a disappointment, about how his son deserved better than a broken man who'd lost everything. As if love had conditions, as if worth came with profit statements, as if the man who taught him everything valuable could become worthless overnight because of money. The flashbacks hit him like physical blows. Afternoons in his father's small office, watching calloused hands work over accounting books, learning that honest work was its own reward. His father never owned much, but he shared everything: wisdom, time, attention, the kind of presence that makes children feel safe in an unsafe world. "Success without integrity is just decorated failure," his father would say, not knowing he was preparing his son for the day when integrity would be all Chike had left to hold on to. The business collapse came like a heart attack, sudden, devastating, changing everything in a single moment. Suppliers demanding payment, customers disappearing, dreams crumbling into debt that felt like quicksand. Chike watched his father shrink under the weight of perceived failure, saw pride curdle into shame, witnessed confidence leak out of the man who'd always seemed unshakable. The night he disappeared, Chike's father kissed his forehead and whispered, "Be better than me, son. Be the man I couldn't stay strong enough to be." Those words echo in every success Chike achieves, a blessing and a curse wrapped in the same breath. His mother's death 2 months later finished what his father's disappearance started: the complete destruction of the only family Chike had ever known. She died of heartbreak. The doctors called it cardiac arrest, but anyone who knew her understood the truth: she died of missing the other half of her soul. Chike buried her in a cemetery plot next to an empty grave he'd purchased for his father, hope and grief lying side by side in consecrated ground. Standing at her funeral, surrounded by people offering comfort he couldn't accept, he made a promise to her headstone: in his father's absence, he would find the man who gave him life, would restore the honor that shame had stolen, would prove that love doesn't end just because money does. That promise has driven him for a decade, through every promotion, every success, every achievement that feels hollow without his father there to witness it. He built his fortune on the foundation of finding his father, but foundations are only as strong as what they're built on, and his is built on hope that grows thinner with each passing year. The hotel room's silence presses against him like a living thing, broken only by the sound of his own breathing and the distant hum of a city full of strangers. Chaik opens his laptop and begins his nightly ritual, scanning missing persons databases, scrolling through homeless shelter records, checking morgue reports with the detached efficiency of someone who's learned to hope and grieve simultaneously. His search history tells the story of obsession disguised as love: missing persons Nigeria, homeless shelters Lagos, unidentified elderly men. Each query a prayer, each result a small death. His wife calls, her voice bright with concern about when he's coming home, but how does he explain that home feels like a beautiful lie when the person who taught him what family means is sleeping under some bridge, wondering if anyone remembers his name? He promises to return tomorrow, knowing he'll carry this weight back with him, this burden of loving someone who might not want to be loved anymore. But love doesn't require permission, and hope doesn't need evidence. Sometimes they're all that keeps a heart beating when logic says it should stop. The photograph goes back into his wallet, creased and fading but precious as any treasure. Tomorrow he'll wake up and continue the search, will smile at his wife and pretend the hole in his heart isn't growing larger each day. He'll go to work and make more money, will live in luxury and achievement, will play the role of successful businessman while inside he remains simply a son who wants his father to come home. But tonight, in this anonymous hotel room that costs more than his father used to make in a month, Chaik allows himself to cry for time lost, for love interrupted, for the cruel irony that success feels like failure when you have no one to share it with. Somewhere in the same city, perhaps even in the same neighborhood where his comfortable house sits, an old man might be lying awake wondering if his son ever thinks about him. If they only knew how close they are to each other, if they could see past the barriers of shame and circumstance that keep love from finding its way home. But tomorrow will bring new possibilities, new hope, and perhaps, just perhaps, the miracle that reunites hearts that never really learned how to beat apart. The private investigator's office smells like stale coffee and broken dreams, walls lined with filing cabinets that hold fragments of other people's missing lives. Chaik sits across from Detective Samuel, spreading out photographs, bank statements, and police reports like puzzle pieces that refuse to form a complete picture. "I checked every registered shelter in Lagos, Abuja, Port Harcourt," Samuel says, his voice carrying the professional sympathy of someone who delivers disappointment for a living. "Your father hasn't used his bank account, his phone, any of his known contacts. It's like he stepped off the face of the earth." The words hit Chaik's chest like stones thrown at glass, each fact another crack in the hope he's been nurturing for 10 years. Outside the window, Lagos traffic moves in its eternal dance of chaos and purpose, millions of people visible and accounted for while his father remains a ghost among the living. The invoice for this month's search efforts sits on the desk between them. Numbers that would shock most people but mean nothing to Chaik compared to the possibility of finding his father breathing and well somewhere in this vast, indifferent world. The childhood memories flood back as he leaves the detective's office, walking through streets where every elderly man becomes a possibility, every bent figure a potential miracle. He remembers Saturday mornings when his father would take him to the market, teaching him to negotiate with vendors not to save money but to show respect for their craft. "Every honest person deserves dignity in their work, son," his father would say, counting out exact change into weathered palms. "Money changes hands, but respect changes hearts." Those lessons pulse through Chaik now as he searches faces in crowds, hoping to recognize the features that shaped his own, the hands that taught him to tie his shoes and shake hands firmly and treat everyone like they matter. His father's disappearance left him wealthy but orphaned, successful but searching, accomplished but alone in ways that cut deeper than any childhood wound. Every street corner holds the possibility of reunion, but also the reality of continued separation that grows heavier with each passing year like grief that never learned how to heal. The homeless shelters know Chaik's face now, this well-dressed man who appears monthly with photographs, hope, and donations that keep their programs running. Sister Mary at the Sacred Heart Shelter pours him tea with hands that have comforted countless lost souls, her eyes holding the particular sadness reserved for good people fighting impossible odds. "Your father was proud, wasn't he?" she asks, though she already knows the answer. Proud men have the hardest time accepting help. They'd rather disappear than admit they need saving. Her words carry the weight of experience with dignity-wounded men who choose invisibility over charity, who sleep rough rather than accept beds that feel like admissions of failure.